Hello and welcome. Well, few things give all of us in India more pride than seeing people of Indian origin going and really making a mark on the global stage. And we've really been seeing that in technology in particular, where so many Indians have gone and risen to the very, very top. And none more so than Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google. It's such a pleasure to have you talking to us here at NDTV, and it's just great to have you back in the country.
Oh, it's incredible to be back here. Thank you for having me.
Well, you know, I remember interviewing you, Mr. Pichai, just I think a couple of weeks before you took over as CEO. And I remember asking you this question that, are you about to become the CEO of Google? And I know you had to do some fancy footwork to get around that at that stage. But how's the experience been?
It's been great in many ways. You know, I've been working closely with Larry for a long time, and Google is a phenomenal opportunity to do things at a global scale. You know, we're fortunate to have products which are used by billions of users around the world, and so working every day on things which can impact billions of people is a true privilege. It's been great.
There are some people who were wondering a few years back that is the best of the innovation and the years of innovation behind us. Are we starting to plateau a little bit? Now it seems that there's another really exciting phase that is dawning upon us: artificial intelligence, virtual reality. Do you think the best is still to come?
You know, always, for me, whenever I look back at things, roughly every 10 years or so, we have these big shifts in technology. And it's tough to appreciate it when you're living in the middle of it. But, I remember the PC revolution in the 80s, and a decade later, the internet coming and taking off, which was an incredible revolution. Roughly 10 years later, you had the smartphones. And the mobile revolution is still underway, and you can see that in a place like India, where there are now, I think, around 350 million smartphones. And I think, the next big shift is underway. We call it a shift from a mobile-first to an AI-first world. I think computing will be more universally accessible for users. It will be highly intelligent, and people will interact with it more naturally than ever before. And all of this will be thanks to advances in machine learning and AI. And so I'm very, very excited by it.
So it is possible that the era that we're living through right now, and we're not fully appreciating it, we will look back at this 7, 8, 9 years from now and saying that was the period when the world shifted perhaps from devices to AI that is doing things for us without necessarily even having devices.
Yeah, and I definitely think this is a point of inflection, and we'll look back at it that way. We are seeing it internally. The advances we are seeing thanks to machine learning have been very, very significant. Just recently, we launched a Google Translate app, and it's an end-to-end machine-learned app. And the quality improvements we saw now were more than the quality improvements we had seen in the past 10 years put together. So I do think you're seeing a point of inflection, and and there's a lot more to come.
All right. I am going to spend some time taking you through that and trying to get from you some of the insights as to the exciting things that we are likely to see at a global level and in technology. But I do want to spend a little time talking about India as well, because it's always good to have you back here. You're here, you're talking about how Google can help small businesses, how they can become more digitally advanced. What are the other things on your roadmap for this trip to India?
I mean, largely, first of all, I came to Delhi last year, and in the year when I look back at the progress we have made, we are increasingly building things in India. We are investing more in India. We realize when we build for India, we can actually take it globally elsewhere. We've had that experience, for example, with YouTube. We made it work offline in India, and it's doing well in other places. So we are working on YouTube Go, which will be launched later, which will help you use YouTube on slower networks without data connections, etc. It's really remarkable the pace at which things get adopted in India and how we can translate it globally. So we'll be doing a lot more that way. And we also care about making sure the internet works for everyone in India as well. So a year ago, we had talked about our Wi-Fi program for train stations, and we had talked about connecting. Our goal was to connect 400 stations, and we had focused on the 100 busiest stations. And we did that. We are now in 110 stations. And it's used by millions of users every day. So you can see the thirst and hunger for data, for connectivity, for people to be part of the digital economy, and it's remarkable to see.
So the rest of the world really learns everything these days on Google. In fact, it's almost become, it is now a term that is used. You Google any information, you have to Google it. You're saying that Google is also learning from India, and you're learning how when you get things done in India, it can be used in the rest of the world.
Absolutely. For example, I think India, because of the fact that how payments work differently in India than everywhere else, and with the recent change towards digitization of payments, I think these are trends which India is on the tipping point, and so for us, getting our products and services to adapt to these conditions, make it work effectively elsewhere as well.
So I was just about to start asking you about cash and other things. Do you think the fact that we've seen this tectonic shift, and we can keep arguing whether it was a good step or a bad step, but we've seen a tectonic shift. Do you think this is potentially a tipping point for the transition to a digital India? Because I know that's some of the things that you must have been hearing from the government as well, that this could shift the scale, because for the first time 1.2 billion Indians realize that, yes, there is a digital world out there, and maybe we need to start thinking about it.
Look, I've spent most of my life working on, underlying platform shifts, be it the web or mobile. And when you drive these platform shifts, it takes some time for the effects to play out, but it's a multiplicative effect. I think it's a bold, courageous move, and it is a platform shift for the underlying economy to try and digitize how cash moves around. And we are excited by it. I think understanding what UPI is and the power of the stack that's being built here, I think it's truly unique to India, and the scale at which it can work, I think is a unique opportunity. So we are excited. We are thinking hard about how to adapt to it. Maybe we'll bring services from Google on top of UPI, which will make things work better for users in India. But I view it as an exciting step.
But the scale of the challenge is, of course, massive, because digital payments today, about 20% or thereabouts, they're even today saying that after the banning of notes, it could go to 30% in a year. But that's not what's needed. What's needed is to take it to 50% or 60% or 70%. And that's really where a company like Google could perhaps be very helpful. So you're talking about getting some of your services. Could you elaborate on that? What are the sort of ways in which you think Google could help?
We're working on it hard. Anything we can do to make payments easier for users in India, it's something we are open to doing. And so we are trying to understand the UPI stack and, maybe bring some services which will make things work better for Indian users in terms of digital payments.
If you look at the challenges which are being faced by taking India digital, and I know you've been working on these challenges, it's not just in India's interest, it's also in Google's interest when you actually do have 1.2 billion people coming onto the internet. Problem number one, and I'm going to ask you each of these and maybe get your thoughts on them. Problem number one is simply access. Maybe 2/3 of the country doesn't have access to the internet and isn't likely to. That's 700 or 800 million people. And you've again been thinking about this, that Wi-Fi in train stations is a step in that direction. What is your view? How can we make the internet more ubiquitous in India?
I think two big things. One is from our side, we are committed to making even cheaper smartphones. We've been working on $100 smartphones and $50 smartphones. But I think the right price point for India is around, a $30 price point, how we think about it globally. And so pushing and getting high quality smartphones around that price range will unlock it even more. The second part is connectivity. When I look at what's happening in India, the innovation you're seeing amongst carriers and the rate at which connectivity is changing, just in the last few months, we see it as an inflection point again. When we look at services like YouTube, our usage in India is skyrocketing, and I think that's largely due to the fact that more people are getting connectivity. So I think the right things are happening. There could be more infrastructure in terms of fiber deployments, etc., which will accelerate this as well. But I think the right things are happening. We just need to be a bit more patient, but I'm very, very optimistic that things are on the right track.
So essentially, cheaper smartphones, and if you can get them down to the $30 level, you're saying when the mobile handsets are cheap and are easily affordable, then the masses will adopt them, will pick them up, and because in parallel you're getting better telecom that is coming in, suddenly you will find Indians using the internet widely.
Absolutely.
And that mobile first part is important, and that's some of the learnings that you're taking back from India. India is a mobile first country, so how do we build things out here?
Mobile first, the fact people are using it in rural places, voice matters, getting this to work in different languages, understanding different dialects, all these learnings, apply globally as well. And, so trying to get all of this working in India, forces us to solve problems differently than ever before.
One of the problems, of course, with access is that even if you do have the internet, it's not necessarily reliable. It could work one day, it may not work one day. And that's already forced you to make some changes, like you have offline modes in Google Maps and you can download YouTube videos overnight if you have good quality connection. Those are some of the steps that I guess you're already taking.
Yeah, and everything we are doing in India, we now think about making sure it works well on slower connections and flaky connections, as we call it. And I think makes a big difference.
The other aspect, I guess, would also be in the user experience, because a lot of the people who are now going to be getting these new handsets haven't necessarily been exposed to mobile phones or the internet. Some of them may not even be literate. So is that something that you're turning your attention to? What is the user experience that I'm going to give to someone using Google or using the internet in India? And there could be 600 million people who never had access to technology.
Oh, okay. It was fascinating. Our team spent, they immersed themselves in a village in Rajasthan trying to understand how rural users use this. As part of our Internet Sati program, we've been traveling around trying to train rural Indian women on how to use the internet. And one example, I talked about it earlier, Chetna, a woman from Alwar, Rajasthan, just learning how to use the internet, they were able to search for what was actually infecting their crops. They were losing the harvest, and then the village worked, organized around it to save the harvest. So you can see getting access makes a profound difference in people's lives. And so we are very motivated by it. And it's a hard problem, but we are working very, very hard. But we are trying to go deeper. And that we now have many programs geared towards doing things like that. And
so is it possible that you could customize things even further? I mean, there is stock Android, and of course Android then gets customized by various people. But is it possible that you could be looking at India and saying, well, maybe we need to rethink the operating system itself, or certainly the user experience or the skin around that completely, because we are now targeting people who are very different from anybody we may be targeting in Europe or in China or certainly in the US.
Our largest user base for Android is in India now. So, absolutely, as we develop Android further, we're going to be thinking about stuff which is very, very specific to India. So be it in terms of supporting languages, how we make it easy for voice interactions to work, or how do we make digital payments to work? Maybe fingerprint scanning should be built more natively in phones. These are all areas we are thinking about, and so you will clearly see us think about India first for Android.